Why don't you guys kick off and introduce yourselves, who you are, where you work, and maybe your favorite NFT projects or crypto projects to kick things off.
All right, I'll start off. My name is Sebastian Oddo. I work for Mastercard. I'm the director of Web3, NFTs, and blockchain. And I've been in the space for a while now. And I would say my favorite collection right now that's been inspiring me has been Cool Cats. The reason for Cool Cats is because I love the experiential stuff that they do around NFT NYC. Really inspired me. I saw the Disney part of the NFT world. So.
I'm Rachel Weiss. I lead our strategic venture fund at L'Oreal. I've been at L'Oreal for 15 years, leading digital innovation. So I've been talking about blockchain and Web3 for quite a period of time now. So I'm happy to be here. And my favorite, and I can't really name an NFT project, but one that I'm passionate about that we won a Crypty for this week was for BFF, which is a community to support LGBTQ and women to get into the space and understand Web3. So that's one of my favorites.
And congratulations. Very exciting.
Thank you.
Hey, Jessica from Coinbase. I run partnerships and brand there. I minted my first NFT through Atom Bomb Squad back in the day. Bobby has been a friend for a while and my husband's obsessed with the hundreds gear, so we got in that way. I think there's so many awesome inspirational projects. Amber Vittoria is an artist that comes to mind. She's got such a unique look and feel to her art, and I feel like NFTs are just a new medium for her and not necessarily like a means to an end on specifically art. But I think so many people are doing so much cool stuff in the space, I probably couldn't choose one.
Amazing. And my name again, Matt Joanou, co-founder and CEO of Stakeholder Labs. We build software for publicly traded brands to engage their retail shareholders, and particularly interested in how innovation is affecting consumer engagement strategies and how we're going about that. To kick things off, maybe we just start at a high level around Art Basel and why has this become a place to show up and what you guys are looking to get out of these few days down here. And Sebastian, we talked a little bit about the IRL component, the gated tokens. If you want to kick things off, we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So for me, coming down to Art Basel has been an experience to really understand how token gating works. And what that means for those who don't know what token gating is the idea that if you own a digital asset, an NFT, it will grant you access somewhere. So going up and showing up to a door and showing your NFT and getting it scanned to get you in, that means something to Mastercard. And as we look at the technology and as we start to think about our own experience, our own priceless experiences, what does that mean for our card holders? So that's really been something that I'm excited to kind of watch.
Rachel, has there been, get the mic figured out, has there been a particular activation at Art Basel this week that stood out to you or that has brought a little bit of inspiration into how you might think about things coming into next year?
I mean, it's been really interesting coming here. It's my first year on the investment side, so I've been coming to Art Basel for vacation for many years, and for the last 2 years it's been a work trip, which has been fascinating. Last year was just crazy, but you know, I think it reminds me of the community and people that I met in the early days of South by. Granted that I've been up to 4 o'clock in the morning the last 2 nights, which is something I don't do that often anymore, but it's very telling about the energy and the intersection of tech and brand and entrepreneurs. So I'm really excited this year. Last year I met a lot of people who were just like hyped on the buzz, meeting companies this year who are and investors who are actually focused on real business and real companies that I see that will be in business over the next 10 plus years is different and exciting.
And maybe, Jessica, if you want to kick things off, going a level deeper, so each company that you guys represent you come about innovation in a different way. So from a partnerships angle, from a corp dev and VC angle, and then from kind of a more explicit, I'm the leader of Web3 angle. So I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about how you approach innovation at your companies and maybe dovetailing off your experience with Art Basel this week.
I mean, Coinbase is an innovation company. They were born out of the first Bitcoin exchange. So the entire ethos is sort of bred on the mission of crypto in general, but innovation in particular. And we are really focused on obviously like better economics and opportunities for consumers, but really why we're here is we're building enterprise solutions for blockchain enablement for brands. And being here, I think, is super helpful because last year it was all artists and NFT artists, and this year there are so many brands here. Like every brand that you could ever want to talk to has a representative here because they see the future in particularly the like opportunity on loyalty on the blockchain, better community engagement through Web3 ecosystems. And for us, we want to build the solutions that will enable those opportunities. So whether it be, easier custodial wallets for consumers or easier solutions for scaled minting for brands to be able to custody their crypto and be able to then participate in this ecosystem in a safer way, I think all of that is super prevalent here, and the conversations have gone from this is a fun, volatile asset, my NFT, to like what's the future of my brand and my company as it relates to potentially revenue-generating experiences based on this technology.
I like that a lot. I think that shift from last year to this year, Sebastian, we were talking a little bit about Mastercard and how you're trying to soak up these activations to bring back inspiration to the team, but also looking at the deep tech underneath, what's powering this, and not just what's on the surface level, but how are these things happening. Would be curious to hear how Mastercard thinks about innovation a la Web3 and what that means to the team, and maybe even get into internally how that manifests.
Yeah, so at Mastercard, the diversity in thinking is very important to us. So bringing someone from the engineering and blockchain and crypto team with someone from marketing, with someone from finance is extremely important for that innovation to happen. So for us, when we're building products, it's inclusion, making sure we have the right people, the right makeup of people on the team to think about that product. And then, does it have a purpose behind it? Are we helping people in a unique way, or are we just building to build? And I think it's important for us to think about that from a human perspective. Are we building something that's going to help somebody, a migrant worker in Sri Lanka, or is this just for marketing's sake? So I think it's really, that's where we look at it, is purpose-driven marketing when we build products and services.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And Rachel, on the L'Oreal side, how do you guys look at what's being done here? Are you looking at it through an investment lens? Are you looking at it through the ability to take this back to your team? How do you bring that to L'Oreal? And then also, how does that feed into what innovation means to L'Oreal?
Yeah, I mean, it's both. I mean, we started our NFT Web3 journey with brands over a year ago. We learned very quickly that there was so much education that needed to happen. So we just hosted this week, I don't even know what week it is, a day called Beautyverse in partnership with our Learning for Development team. We've had year-long educational sessions that has not only included brands, but tax, legal, finance, that's global, just so people, because we can talk about loyalty and we can talk about these campaigns, but if this is an infrastructural way of changing how consumers are going to interact with the internet that redefines beauty and identity, if you think about what that can mean, AR filters in your wallet as tickets, for exclusive drops and Ulta, I'm just making that up, but that's the future we see. But if our employees don't know how to download a wallet, how do our consumers, right? So it's been a year of education, test and learn. It's been very surprising being at on a Web 2.0 pioneer, how fast this is becoming adopted by our teams. So that's been, so of course it's going to take investment and education and a lot of innovation and pilots.
I'm hearing a lot about education internally and getting teams ready. Jessica, I'd be curious, your thoughts working with a lot of brands day to day. Where are we at in the journey? How far along are brands in really understanding what's possible? Especially, I'm going to call out the elephant in the room with what's happened over the last few weeks with FTX, some macro headwinds. I know Coinbase has taken a bit of a stance and showcased what they've built in the US specifically and how they've really focused on regulation and creating playbooks and rule books around that. I'd be curious to understand your thoughts on where are we at with these brands and how are you guys planning coming into next year?
I think what we see from brands as far as how far along the journey they are, the brands that have been the first to the table in other areas were also the first to the table here. I mean, we've seen innovation from L'Oreal, from Nike, from Starbucks, from Adidas in the past, and they're going to be the first ones out there because they're willing to take a risk, test and learn, put aside an innovation budget to support something like this, and then once they have the learnings, bring it back in and then make a spin off a business like Adidas did, or make a huge revenue play on it like Nike's going to. So I think those who are always on the front lines of testing the waters in new mediums, this is something that they're into. The nice thing is that, every brand here, whether you're a Unilever or a Chipotle, they are all thinking about how the future of this and what it means to them. You don't need an NFT for Colgate toothpaste, but it could be an interesting model for direct-to-consumer engagement that you may not have if you're a traditionally disintermediated brand that sells through third-party or shops. FTX obviously has put back, I think, crypto in particular industry at least a few years. Obviously, a fraudulent individual has ripped most liquidity out of the market. So if you're a crypto brand like we are, we have a ton of re-education to do amongst the consumer set in order to, make them believe that this is a one-time, very, distrustful person versus a whole industry. By the way, the media tour of SBF on Good Morning America is not doing us any favors. However, put that aside. Coinbase is a legitimate company. We've been around here for 10 plus years. We are publicly traded, all those things. I think brands haven't stopped building. I think what they're doing is taking another look at their exposure. So making sure that they have the right legal terms so that, for instance, Coachella's NFTs are all locked in the FTX NFT database because they didn't think about separate keys for both parties, so they can't pull the NFTs off. That is a terrible consumer experience, and so Coachella in the future will never make that mistake again, and they will be sure that their consumers understand about self-custodial wallets, about double-sided keys for a brand and a consumer, as well as the platform. So I think it's a sad way for people to learn, but I think it's a really good opportunity for everyone to get super deep into the details, understand the company that you're doing business with, and then really make sure that your consumers are protected no matter what.
I think everything you covered really puts in perspective kind of where things are at as the industry transitions, especially with brands. Sebastian, being at more of a traditional fintech company, I'd be curious how you guys approach a new technology like NFT and crypto and what comes along with that, and you're re-educating consumers that have been loyal to you guys for a long time. So maybe talk a little bit about Mastercard's approach and how you guys structure this internally.
Yeah, there's two things to think about when you're creating mass adoption for millions of people across the globe. One, how are you speaking globally to those customers? Because setting up a wallet in Argentina means something different than someone in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, right? And it's a totally different experience with Wi-Fi, with technology and all that. So we're making sure that we're speaking their language. And I think, the second thing is making sure that we're having that human connection with that user experience, right? The user experience is extremely important. If we're not getting that right, then nothing else matters. That's why at Mastercard we're thinking about what are the different Web3 players that are out in the space. How can we support them in the spirit of Web3 instead of just coming and building something ourselves? Is there an opportunity for us to partner with other Web3 creators, artists, builders in the space? And that to me is very important. So our crypto and blockchain team, you see all this is public information, partnering with collections, partnering with marketplaces, making it easy for consumers to be able to purchase with a card. So all of that is very important to us.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You touched on customer experience there, and I want to get a little bit into the customer engagement side of things. And Rachel, I'll start with you and L'Oreal. You have kind of this overview of the marketplace, and I'm sure you're talking to kind of the bleeding edge companies every day. Looking at customer engagement and brand loyalty, how has that maybe changed how you guys measure loyalty and how you quantify what a good customer relationship looks like? And that could be now, but also maybe how are you guys looking to the future to measure that and quantify what that could look like?
Yeah, I'm going to speak about this from a future perspective because it's where my brain is and what I'm obsessed with. So I will say the loyalty chain is broken, right? So what we're thinking quite a bit about at L'Oreal is like the two-sided aspect of this, which is, I'd argue that creators have helped make some of the biggest Web 2.0 platforms, beauty makeup tutorials, which were very revolutionary when I started at L'Oreal, and now are, giant on YouTube, and Snap filters and TikTok filters. Like beauty helps really make these grow giant platforms. However, if you look at the economics of the creator ecosystem, it's only like 1 or 2% make an honest living, right? So there's like that piece. The second piece is we have so much engagement of fans who love our brands. And if you think about Gen Z and their next generation of brand loyalists, like they all say they want to be creators as their number one job, right? And I'll give an example I heard this week, which I really love. And you think about the Taylor Swift ticket sales, right? And think about I don't know if everyone had kids or was in the queue, and it was sad. People were crying that have been Taylor Swift fans their whole life and they couldn't get a ticket, right? If you've been Taylor #1, oh gee, you should have got a ticket. But I think it's a really great example of how blockchain and loyalty can influence brands that we're incentivizing the people who share for major experiences, and we can track them now, but also compensate our creators and fans. So that for me is the holy grail ticket of the future of loyalty for brands, that I've met companies that are starting to really build this. They're very early, but that's where I see this going for the future of loyalty and brands and fandom in general.
I love that. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think the models are shifting, but it will take some time. Maybe on the Coinbase side, when you guys are working with brands, how are you comparing apples to apples, what they're doing in a more Web 2.0 world to some of their initiatives in the Web 3 world? Is that new metrics? Are you guys fitting into their existing metrics? How might you go about that with your brand partnerships?
I think it's really inspiring to see them really take a more community-first approach, really coming at it from an angle on, we don't want to shove something new that's not beneficial to the consumer down their throat. Rather, we'd like to provide a more equal value exchange to our consumers, particularly as it relates to community engagement with each other. How can they provide more value as a brand to make them sticky for the long term? Yes, of course, everything always relates back to, can we, generate more revenue? But I do think that it's been really great to see that they're not just sort of slapping Web 3 onto a Web 2 sort of thinking, but rather really recreating the system so that they are also participating in this value exchange. It seems like people are really taking a different approach. Some things I've seen in the past where they're just trying to like shove themselves into this new medium, but rather taking a very strategic approach.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, given where we're at heading into next year, I'm seeing a lot of brands that are starting to lean in and dip their toe, and in spite of some headwinds, are still pressing forward, which makes a lot of sense. How do you guys see this structurally, internally, affecting how marketing teams are organized, your relationships with agencies, and just generally the ecosystem? It still feels like Web3 is in a separate camp, but as we have more events like this, how do you see that maybe coming together and redefining how they work, again, internally or with their media agency, with their creative agency, with their social agency? And I'll hand it to you, Sebastian, because you have experience on both sides of the table.
Yeah, I worked in the agency world for many years, so I have a ton of experience in that space, but there has to be buy-in from the top. If your CEO and your CMO are not talking about Web3 and transformation, or not educating, like L'Oreal, all the employees, then you're going to lose, or you're not going to have that sort of fast speed that you need to move in this space. So at Mastercard, it's been really refreshing to see our CEO and see our CMO talk about what Web3 transformation means, and how we're going to have a part in that. Not only a part, but a purposeful part in that. So that's key.
Kind of building on that, and for the entire panel, what are maybe some of the pitfalls, some of the challenges that you see that brands are making? And so if you were giving advice to agencies or brands that you would advise, hey, watch out for this, or this hurdle is going to come up very early, looks like, Rachel, you might have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, now you're seeing projects that brands probably proposed a year ago launching in the hype of NFTs, because it takes that long to get something off the ground for something that's new. So I do think there'll be some mistakes, and I love the Coachella example. I think it's a great example. But I think that you have to make sure. I'm very happy at L'Oreal that we were like, chill out. Like, this is exciting, but like, let's get legal involved. Let's like get our CFO involved. Like, we have a brand that launched a DAO, and I was like, do not do this until you speak to legal and to our tax people. And so then educating them has been part of it. You know, the good news, the two sides of it are, there's going to be people. I work at a very large conglomerate, right, who are like super psyched and get this, and like, but at the same time, like, sometimes they're moving like too fast. So, you know, I think the education thing has been great. I'll tell you a great thing that we did this year to help educate. We had a party at like NFT NYC, and we invited like our CMO, and we invited people, but it was like a different crowd. I mean, I'm sorry, it was like a whole new community, and we had to throw them out of the party. Like, it wasn't the same people we see at CES or at ad tech events. Like, it was a whole new group of people, and that was like, and they were excited, and they were talking, and it was diverse, and that was really exciting. And that's where I think like our CMO looked around, I was like, wait a minute, who are these people? And it was like the biggest influencers in the space. So I recommend those kinds of things. And it wasn't even a campaign, it was like coffee and, you know, cocktails at NFT NYC.
The human element and making those connections in person.
Yeah, I think that when people actually can, brands, and to your point at the top, can physically see the communities and the humans that are involved in this and how psyched they are about it, it helps bring it to life. When they see artists and they see people come up and say, oh my gosh, like, my partnership with you is helping me, like, you know, I was homeless and now I run a community on Discord on beauty, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, I love that helped you. So like, seeing that for real, I think really helps.
Wait, can I just jump in on the pitfalls piece? I think there's two that we've seen that, you know, just want to avoid. One, this is not an intern's job. Like, please do not put your youngest person fresh into the company to drive the strategy here. This is a senior role. These people are very senior individuals, and you need that. This is like long-term vision, strategic. You need tons of cross-functional input, and this needs to be a team. Like, if you're in it, you're in it, and you need someone very senior to like drive the strategy. I think the other piece is This is a long-term build as well. If you are truly bringing your loyalty on-chain and you're thinking about holding USDC to drive interest and you're thinking about paying in crypto or you're thinking about dispersing money to artists, these are very long-term things. And so I think there's a level of frustration both on our end and on the brand of like, God, this is going to take, a year to get off the ground. And I think that's an amazing time horizon to like get everyone's ducks in a row. We're in a super bear market, like great time to continue to push things forward because it does take a long time. Legal, taxes, those things are so important. And again, I think like the FTX situation is such a ripe just showcase to say that the time that is taken at the beginning will pay off dividends at the end.
I mean, I'll give an example. Like, I've been in the business a long time. Like, Google search took a long time to get off the ground. Like, there was a day when I was in the business. I was like, there's this thing called Google, or Yahoo. You can search and you can find information. Be like, what is that? And there was paid and earned. Like, there was years of education on this, right? And now we take it for granted. Like, it's like that right now. We're like day one.
So maybe a little bit of patience as we approach this new technology and how we engage with it. I want to.
We had not at L'Oreal, it was before that, but we had budgets of $500 to test and learn this. So it's very funny to think it's like that again.
I like that parallel. I think it's very accurate. Maybe on the other side of things, who has been inspirational to you guys? What brands have you seen that have done the execution well over the last 2 years? Jessica, maybe someone you've worked with at Coinbase, or let's aim for a bigger corporate brand that has done a strong activation that you guys have been inspired by.
I mean, I think what Rachel has done at L'Oreal, the slow but steady sort of wins the race mentality, is super inspirational because it does just make us see that the brands are coming and they're going to do it at their pace and with their consumer and employee in mind. And so it doesn't need to be this big flash in the pan, but sort of a gradual lift. So I love that. I think in general, the crossover from, I just came from the Doodles Putt-Putt, so I'm just gonna say Doodles has really gone from an NFT project into a revenue generating business and a brand and something that is building for the future. And I think they had success the other way around, but I do think it's a fascinating case study in really taking the time to build something for the long term that will live in so many different opportunities, mediums, branded merch, that I think it's just a good case study on brand, not necessarily the corporate big brand.
Any other brands that have stood out to you over the last 2 years maybe that have done strong activations in crypto, NFTs, Web3 in general?
I mean, I love the Doodles example because I think the next $1 billion brand will be built out of something like a Doodles, right? There's there was a project called Boss Beauties, right? And they're doing integrations with Marvel and building characters, and we imagine they'll have consumer products one day. So, I think it's these endemic. I think that we discount a lot. It's not the brands that L'Oreal, right? We'll of course do things around this. Will be part of our growth strategy, but it's the endemic brands that one day might become an acquisition target for a company like L'Oreal, who builds a beauty brand endemically out of Web3 and an MT project. That's pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think AB InBev has done a tremendous job, and I'll give a shout out to Vayner3 and VaynerMedia for their support with AB InBev and Budweiser specifically. I think that their leadership and their innovation up front when all this started is sometimes you have to take that leap, and they took that leap and they started to explore and they started to test and learn, and then they started to build really meaningful programs, which they have one out right now around FIFA World Cup, and build it into their sponsorship deals. These are really, really innovative, and most people don't understand what's happening. To be able to see your live score in an NFT, that's wild. That's never been done before. So I give a big shout out to the Budweiser team for their work, and also Vayner for supporting them on that.
Okay, one other, sorry, now that I'm thinking about it.
Go for it.
I think the NBA has been pretty innovative over the course of the past 5 years, really starting sort of this whole craze with NBA Top Shot, like having the foresight with Dapper to really put that together. They onboarded millions of consumers into NFTs. Maybe not, like many are questioning their financial investment in Top Shot now, but I think even continuing into, they're now doing digital trading cards was so rare. They dropped their own NFT project that, had some struggles on the contract side, but again, like they're really pushing the needle on testing and learning in a space that is traditionally very, very conservative, i.e. like, professional sports. So I also think NBA is a partner of ours, and we're constantly like very impressed with how much they push the needle internally with their leadership team in order to move deeper into the Web3 space.
I love that. I've heard test and learn quite a bit from the three of you, and how would you set up a sandbox internally, or how are you setting up these sandboxes internally so that projects can be tried, maybe they don't work out, and then how do you translate those into learnings to continue to build and move forward? I think the nature of Web3, and Rachel, to your point, search, social, all these industries took a long time to grow, and there was a lot of failure in those early days. So how do you guys approach test and learn, and how do you create that space maybe for your teams internally?
I think for us is working within NFT collections or artists or creators and working with their community and building with their community to see what works and what doesn't work at a small level first, and then from there you could onboard millions of people outside of that. So you have to start small. For example, after this event, I'm going to a paint party that's hosted by Ferocious, and like super excited to be there. Like the test and learn there is, what is it like to get into a token gated event? When you're there, what is it like to get customized content that as an NFT holder I might see on screens? That could be a small, gathering that you bring executives or coworkers to kind of test out and learn. And then from there, how can we then make that a priceless experience for maybe card holders, where we bring an artist or we bring in other people? So that's how I see it.
We actually formed a global community called the Metaforce, where we have monthly meetings with our earliest champions as employees to we have 2 meetings, people in China, people in Paris, people in the United States, who get together and share learnings and talk about what's next and talk about what happened on FTX as a team. And I think that's been super successful because we're actually building an internal community of advocacy who are testing and learning. And I think that's been a really great initiative out of our headquarters, and that's works.
We dog food every product that we have, and we let creators and brands dog food those same products, i.e. they get to test the product well before it goes live. We learned our lesson pretty deeply. We thought we could easily build an NFT platform, and it took us maybe a year longer than we thought it would. And still, we don't have all the things that are most important to creators or most important to brands. And so for every new product that we build, we have a list of people that we ask, like, if you have time, can you get in and dog food this product? Can you test it out? Can you see what you would want to do? Like, what are the features that are missing? And then we just build sort of those things well before we make a huge launch out into the public, so that hopefully it aligns to what they need, and we've already done a lot of our due diligence on the testing side.
So I'm hearing a lot of actually going to the experiences in person and getting a feel for it, having a community of different people that you're pulling from, running dog food with creators and beta partners. Where do you guys personally look online, maybe? Who are the thought leaders and influencers that you're following? Are you on Twitter? Are you in Discords? Like, how do you collate? There's a lot of information out there, and sometimes it feels hard to stay up with everything that's going on. It's overwhelming, I'll say, from my end. How do you guys do it? Where do you look to?
Yeah, so outside of my day job, I go to colleges and high schools to swim upstream and teach students on what it means about Web3 and others. And I always tell them, you have to be a good listener. Right? That's how I learned. I listened on Twitter Spaces. I listened on Discord. I listened on, for Gary Vee, for example, on YouTube. Like, I listened a lot, and I took notes, and then I dove deeper after that. So if there was something that someone said and it sparked my imagination or it got me interested, I would then take the weekend to go learn about that one little component. So I would say just be a good listener and really just continue to keep building that little circle of people who are inspiring you in the space.
Rachel, what about you? Where are you looking for inspiration?
I've been pretty deep in this since Coinbase used to have really early events in 2013 and 14 and give us free Bitcoin and stuff. And
we'll go back to that.
Yeah, go back to that, please. But I didn't even know what it was. But what was really interesting to me as a woman in a space in 2013, 2014, there was no other women, right? And the women that I met, we've started to form a community together, and now we're all really good friends. And I have to say, so that initial group of OGs, Clubhouse was amazing. I think under lockdown, we were killing it, learning so much. I missed that, right? Were you guys on Clubhouse? But as part of that, again, I met real community. So I'll show up to anything. If there is an NFT event, I'll go. Just show up. I read quite a bit. I read there's now a lot of publications out there. There's Twitter Spaces. There's just being parts of communities. I think if you're when you live it and you're part of it, you can't be armchair to totally get this stuff. You have to, we talk about community and we talk about what that means. You have to be, brands are terrible community members, right? They were terrible. But the future about this and why I was excited, it's about really being a real community as humans. So put yourself in and become part of it, and that's my advice.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I feel bringing this CMO to these places, it does spark just a whole new venture down. Wow, there's massive communities that brands just forego all together. I feel coming to places like this, coming to things like NFT NYC, any Twitter meetup, any NFT meetup, I feel NFT and crypto Twitter are a little touch and go, so you got to really find the voices that make sense and are authentic. I think there are a million good podcasts out there just to keep up on the space. Bankless does a great job. Overpriced JPEGs does a great job. They really have their finger on the pulse, and I think they talk about much deeper, and so you can be as light as you want, or you can then research after that. But it's really just about doing the work, and I think places like this are amazing, and you just come with a list of things that you're ready to talk about, bring it up in a discussion, and it is so insightful. I've been taking notes all week about the things people care about, what they're looking for, how they're thinking about it, what artists they're working with, who are the new artists that are just up and coming. It's just ripe for all the information.
And I'll say too, a lot of the venture, Andreessen Horowitz has an amazing onboarding blog, and a lot of the people who are deep on the investing side. If you look at them, you can learn quite a bit from them because they're doing podcasts and they're writing, and it can be very deep.
Totally. Shout out to Vayner3, who literally has anything you could ever want to know. They just came out with a really insightful brand report on how they're approaching Web3. Avery Akini, the president, does a podcast now with CoinDesk called Gen C. That is incredible. Amazing agencies out there doing good work.
Great tips. Appreciate all those shout outs. As we wind down, what are one or two trends that brand marketers, agency leads should be thinking about coming into next year? Maybe what's a prediction that you would have for 2023? How should they be looking at next year and opportunities and maybe challenges that the industry might face?
I think next year we're going to see a ton of loyalty programs start to really come out and be introduced. So my wife, who has a Gap card, we'll see in the next year or two that be an NFT that she could hook on, connect her wallet to Gap.com or connect her wallet to another site that Gap gives her exclusive content to. So I think, this idea of taking those traditional loyalty programs and bringing them online. That's the first thing, and then trust and security. Trust and security, we're going to start to see more and more come up, and how brands are going to emphasize the importance of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to go from flash to utility. And I think it'll be, again, loyalty is so needed across any brand. We'll start to see that. I think it's going to take a couple years to get there. I hope by the end of 2023, maybe some of our biggest brands are in like Web 2.7.
I like it. Not 2.5, a little bit further along than 2.5.
Okay, I totally zoned out when you asked the question.
Looking at trends next year and what are the opportunities, especially through the lens of a brand marketer or an agency, what should they be thinking about coming into next year?
I mean, I think people are all eyes on Nike and Starbucks to see what comes from those, and we'll take the lessons from those two brands and truly start to like run to their own solution. I do think, from what I hear from people, everyone is waiting for bated breath, like with bated breath, to see how that all goes, and then really dig deep on what's the technology that's right for me, what's the engagement model that's right for me, how do I think about this as long-term business. But I would say I am going to wait for some of the launches from those, and then the trends will build from there.
Love it. Last question. If you guys had unlimited budgets within reason, what would be a dream project? And let's say you had a green light to go do whatever you wanted. What would be a dream project for your brand in the Web3 NFT space?
I think fixing the ticketing model is a dream project for us. We all see just how bad and archaic and just wrong it is. I heard from Ticketmaster that there was 3 billion bots that tried to attack the system the day Taylor Swift tickets went live. And that's just a problem that I do think token gating and blockchain can help solve. So I think just ticketing in general, including things like token gating, is a true dream project for someone like Coinbase.
And I actually think Taylor Swift might come out and be the hero that we've all been waiting for, to help make this real to people. It's true, right? I think she's oh my God, she loved my fans. My dream project is about that. It's how do I incent my creators and my fans and my shoppers and my consumers with cross-brand loyalty and reward them in ways that they've never been rewarded, experiences and drops, and that would be my dream. And we live in a very distributed market. And we have people who are advocates, and they're not being rewarded in the way they should be as Taylor Swift's fans. So that's, if I had unlimited budget, I would build that.
I would say onboarding, swimming upstream and onboarding the youth into Web3, and especially underprivileged groups. So I think it's important for us to, as a society, to help those who might not be as fortunate as us sitting here in Miami to learn about Web3. And that's what, if I had $10 million, that's what I would do, is I'd put programs in place for all the schools in the United States and elsewhere.
Amazing, love that. Thank each of you for the time. I know it's a very busy week, and all of you for coming and joining us. Learned a lot today. I think a lot of change will come to fruition over this next year. And as a lot of you mentioned, brands are just starting to kick off some of the activations they've been working on for a year or two. So next year should be a very exciting time. I want to thank Brand Innovators for hosting this. I think as everyone is feeling, this week is becoming significant. I heard kind of the South by in Miami, you're seeing a convergence of a lot of industries. And I think with that, we're going to hand it off to some audience questions.
Yeah, we'd love some audience questions. Oh, well, okay, we'll start here. How you doing? What advice would you give kind of senior leaders who, want to jump into this world, but may feel a little bit overwhelmed, or kind of this a crawl, walk, run strategy to ease into it? So when I think of digital, it's so massive, and this is another sub-segment of that.
There you go.
Go ahead.
All right, I was just going to say, I think you should apply the L'Oreal model, which is educate and onboard the internal organization first. So your C-suite, bring everybody together for a day of learning, because everybody right now, if you're not doing it together, then everybody's doing it in silos and everybody's not hearing it first. So bring the lawyers, bring the privacy teams, bring the marketing teams, bring them all together, get some lunch, get some pizzas, and really learn about how this is going to transform your business, and then create a plan. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we actually, like with some of our senior executives, have had one-on-ones. Like I've worked with our CEO and very senior people at L'Oreal as someone who's just an advocate for the space without even in a public setting. So it's like, all right, do you know what a wallet is? Like I'm gonna sit, it was like I used to do this with people on Facebook, right? They'd be like, what's Facebook? How do I get a friend? How do I down? And I would sit with them one-on-one because they were doing, people like senior executives don't want to look uncool in front of their like junior teams. So they bring in me as the Gen Xer, not to intimidate them, but it's like, all right, this is how you download a wallet. Like, and we would have like very tactical things. I was like, all right, just spend $10 a month on like Ethereum on Coinbase, like, and see what happens and check it. And like, then like buy this NFT and like join the Discord group. Like I tried to like sit down with them one-on-one to just get into the mechanics of like how it works. This is what OpenSea is. And like, you know, like without, and like then we had the education things. When they came in, when we had Vayner come in, they felt a little bit smarter and not so caught off guard. So that really worked. Like I would find someone in your organization who like can sit with senior executives one-on-one and do a little bit of a personal roadshow.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. We do a lot of this with agencies other than Vayner. You know, sports leagues, brands, any brand that will need this, sort of a crypto and NFT 101, and we'll sit with you and, you know, open up a wallet. We'll show you how to, we'll airdrop an NFT into your wallet. We'll show you how all that works. We'll give you a POAP. We'll do all of that. So if you ever need anything like that, let me know. I think then you have to really sit down and show them, like, here's the others that are playing in this space. I think it's always good for CEOs, CFOs, CMOs to see that the biggest companies in the world are charting this path. And then you've got to, again, have a senior leader who can sit down and really think about strategically, like, what does this mean? And present something that feels like small steps into, you know, a larger strategic vision. This is just something we should test, you know, this year, this month, this quarter. And I think once you've got a little bit of data back from the consumer, you can build that into a story that will get you more budget, more internal support, certainly more people, because every organization has NFT stands that are just sort of like waiting in the wings, ready to jump in and help once they know that this is a priority for the company.
You know, and I want to say too, that's been really interesting in the beauty space, because we're not always the earliest adopters, but fashion has also not been an early adopter. But a lot of senior executives now are starting to get phone calls from analysts. We're a publicly traded company about, what are you doing in Web3? We're seeing Gucci, we're seeing this. Like, so I mean, I really advise to get your senior leaders up to speed ASAP.
I would also shout out, Rachel called out VCs. VCs have their own startups as well that they'll plug you into. So Andreessen has a program where you can literally get in front of all their Web3 projects. Our lead investor is 776. Alexis Ohanian, Caitlin Holloway is on the board of Doodles. So when brands come to them, they plug them in and they basically give them an education session. But VCs or even the corp dev teams at your broader organization can normally connect you into startups that are at the bleeding edge.
That's a great example. Like Alexis will come in and meet with your CEO. Yeah. And it's very one-on-one and seems very like fancy and like it's a great tactic.
Yeah, if anyone wants that connection, happy to help.
Hi. Building off of the point about being a publicly traded company in Web3, all three of you work at companies that I believe are publicly traded, all of which, I know L'Oreal has like this little thing in the US that you can kind of buy. Your stock owner, the owners of your stock are, there's a significant portion of them that are retail investors, which represent, I think, between Coinbase and Mastercard, at least $100 billion plus of value that is parked in your companies via retail brokerage accounts. I think, in my opinion, I think this whole Web3 thing with crypto is a little overblown. Where is the read, write, own in the fact that I'm a customer of Coinbase, I own the stock, and I can participate in the earnings call? Isn't that read, write, own? And I'm curious how you guys think about the stock ownership as it pertains to all of your loyalty programs that I believe all three of you have some form of.
Okay, if I'm understanding your question, you're saying that there's already a loyalty function built into being a public company, i.e. I'm a stock owner, and so I already participate in the building of your company?
Yeah, like for example, I eat at McDonald's sometimes, and I have McDonald's points, but I also own McDonald's shares. So is there, there's currently not a lot of connection between the fact that McDonald's, knowing that I own their shares, but I'm also a McDonald's customer, and the ability to connect that, the loyalty program to the stock ownership. Thinking about Mastercard, I mean, there's billions of dollars locked up of retail investment money, being able to tie that into the rewards that Mastercard is able to give, and just skipping this whole crypto thing, but really focusing on that stock ownership into the loyalty program.
So sorry, I'm still missing the question here. Like, you're asking, should we be allowing people to pay for this loyalty program in stock? Should we give them additional points in loyalty because they're larger stock owners?
Yeah, are you guys exploring the avenues to be able to connect your shareholders?
I don't think any publicly traded company is going to explore this. This is conjecture on my part until there's more regulation. So, we're marketers. We are looking to reward our consumers who buy our products or our experiences. So that is a regulatory question that I don't think any of us can answer.
I also think sort of what you're talking about.
But it's a very interesting question.
It's a great question. I mean, we saw what's happened with some of these tokenized economics with FTT. I mean, granted, our stock price is publicly available, and FTT was a propped up token, minted out of thin air. But I think the second that you start rewarding consumers with financials that are core to your business, then you become a company that is focused solely on what that tokenomics is doing versus really thinking about the future of your business as it relates to building more engagement with consumers, building a longer term, stickier relationship. Those consumers are then going to be focused on how can I pop this thing up one day, versus I'm here for the long term and I want my McDonald's 50 years from now.
Thank you. I would just add, I think that was a question a little bit directed at what we're building. So we are building software where publicly traded companies can connect those types of offerings to stock ownership. And we've actually seen a few that tie NFTs to stock ownership. So
you got to tell us when this is a planted question, Jesus.
You didn't ask it to me directly. We're seeing companies tie NFTs to stock ownership and using that as the lowest common denominator of ownership because it has that connection. And really, the research is showing that millennials and Gen Z are starting to invest in the companies that they know and love. The regulation piece is challenging. Rachel, you brought that up.
Yeah, I think it will be difficult. I come from financial services as well prior to L'Oreal, so I think it will be difficult. That would be a crazy conversation for me to have with our CEO coming back from Basel. It's we need to tie our rewards into stock ownership. He'd be all right, take a step back here. But it's a very provocative question, and I agree with you. I think it's when you talk about what the future of loyalty means and what do people want, and when we learned that that's what Gen Z wants, and there's regulatory environments, I'm psyched about that.
Let's chat. We'll talk about it.
Thank you guys so much for the time. I just had a question. As you think about the challenges of onboarding still, as you guys are thinking about your communication strategies, how do you sort of manage marketing to the Web3 native audience and being authentic, but also managing your brand audience and trying to be authentic to that brand and knowing there's various levels of overlap there?
Yeah, it's done through user experience testing and user experience, upfront architecture. So when you're going to launch a program, you need to be thinking about both of those tracks. Like you said, that's really important. So Web3, crypto native, curious folks, then you're thinking about people like my mom, right? My mom does not understand NFTs, but we're thinking about how do we talk about NFTs in a way that excites her, right? And she thinks about her Macy's card card that she's been a loyal customer for many, many years. Why should she get the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade NFT? What does it mean to her? So it's just done through storyboarding. It's done through bringing and then it just goes back to what I said before. You have to bring the right people in the room. It can't just be the engineers and developers. It's got to be the finance. It's got to be the marketing. It's got to be everybody included so that you have that diversity in thinking to answer that problem.
Yeah, we've been leveraging our brands. We have a portfolio of like over 30-something brands. So we've been leveraging our brands that actually have like a pretty significant social following to be our champion brands to pilot. So like NYX Cosmetics is a brand that was built on Web 2.0, when it has many millions of followers on Instagram. Like we use them as a test bed because they already endemically have the audience. So that's a good way that we're trying to we don't do anything on Web 3 unless there's a little bit of like ability to like drive our biggest fanatics on Web 2.
There is not a single person in Web3 that wouldn't want the next 100 million people onboarded. And so you strip out the language that we're used to, you strip out the word NFT, talk about it as a digital collectible or a deeper community engagement or, you know, a new loyalty program. I mean, I think the Odyssey announcement from Starbucks didn't have a single reference to NFT unless it was like in the, you know, words at the bottom. So I think you speak in a language people are used to seeing, that you don't sort of like inundate them with this new world. I mean, we don't talk about, you know, like SMS text messages. We don't talk about whatever other technology like underlies the things that we know and love every day. So I think you just speak to them in the language they're used to, and most people won't feel that it's two different audiences. It's sort of like we're talking to the same person. We all use these brands the same way that any like Web 2 person would, and so I think it's really about targeting your audience versus like thinking about, oh, let's target Web 2 versus Web 3.
Yeah, I think that it will become, I think we'll see like, we'll know we succeeded and we're at a point where we're not talking about the pipes anymore, where it's seamless to the consumer, where she's rewarded, feels part of community, and like the UX is good, like we won't, the pipes conversation will be done. But I think that's still going to take a little bit because as marketers, we're all figuring out the pipes. We don't even know the pipes.
Well said. I think we have time for one more question. We got in the back, in the hat.
I mean, I love this hat.
The hat has a question.
I feel like we're at an art auction.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Deirdre Blake, luxurydaycharters.com. We're a yachting partner with Brand Innovators, if anyone's been to any of our yachting events. But I have a question. My girlfriend is actually looking to start a company, kind of rent the runway for kids. And my question is, I mean, I'm 52. I'm not really familiar with NFTs, but if she's looking to start a company, is that something she should like just immediately jump to?
I'm not sure about that. I think you should. I think building a brand is the same way you built a brand before, right? Like brand building is brand building. You know, I think endemically, like having brands will come up. We talked about this before you got here. Will be built on Web3, but a company like that, like I don't know. I mean, I think the investor in me thinks a lot of moms who are buying for kids won't even know are not ready yet for a wallet. But it should be part of your business plan and in your back pocket.
100% agree. I think you build a company the same way you built it in the past. Like this still needs audience research. It still needs testing. It still needs, you know, media and paid media or organic media and community building and all the things that you would as you were starting out a company. I will say it's harder to retrofit your company to be on-chain ready than it is for you to build that way from the beginning. So whether you activate on those things now or you choose to roll that out in the future, it is definitely easier to do it from the get-go than to retrofit a company.
And I will say, being on the investor side and seeing early stage companies, like I'm seeing brands that are building on Shopify, but Shopify is starting to integrate Web3 tools. So as you're building a D2C brand, you actually have opportunities to endemically build Web3 in your new brand, just in this ecosystem that already exists.
Amen.
I'd agree with all of that. I spent 5 years at Reddit, and I think a lot of this is meeting your customers and community where they are. If those customers you're targeting are diving into Web3, it might be interesting. But to Jessica's point, there's also underlying utility that's being built on the blockchain that from a technology standpoint, sure, but from the actual customer experience standpoint, I think you meet them where they are. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to the panelists again. Really appreciate the time. Thank you to Brand Innovators, everyone that showed up. Hope you enjoyed the session. Any other thoughts from the Brand Innovators team?